Deputy President David Mabuza has asked that the new board be allowed some space. That's the new Eskom board should be allowed some space to solve the crisis at the power utility. He's been facing questions this afternoon from MPs in the National Council of Provinces. But a question on many now is why generation units at the different power stations keep on tripping all the time. Professor Sampson Mamaphweli, Director for the Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy at the Stellenbosch University, is an expert in these matters, joining me now live here on Today. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you very much for your time. You know, the other day when Eskom announced that 5 generating units in 5 different power stations had tripped almost at the same time, I thought, but how is that possible?
Yeah, good afternoon, Dan, and the viewers. Yeah, that's a question basically that most of us have been asking. So if we go back to or to the technical side of things to try and explain this. So when they say the power station or a generation unit has tripped, so this system has got the generator or the turbines on the other side, and then you've got power electronics that basically controls the generator, and then we've got something that we call the grid code, which is basically the voltages and the frequency tolerance levels. So when the unit trips, it's in a situation where it detects that the voltage or the frequency or some of these aspects in the grid code has changed drastically to either way above the grid code or way below the grid code. So then the generator will then trip to protect the grid. So that's basically what happens technically. Now, the Eskom has been saying for quite some time that there could be some form of sabotage that's taking place at the utility. And, you know, we some of us are starting to believe that because it's easy to play around with the grid code and then you have a system tripping, the generators tripping. Or
yeah,
the
because
units
the other day, those 5 units, almost same time in 5 power stations, makes you wonder. So I guess that sense of beginning to believe that there could be sabotage behind it is becoming real. But I mean, we've got power stations in different parts of the country. They're not all in Mpumalanga, for example. Why is it as well that if one trips, like, say, the one in the Free State, we all should pay the price in the rest of the country? We all get load shed. Why?
So the challenge is we've got power stations that are located in different places, yes, but we are operating a single grid. So there's no island in South Africa. So when 1 or 2 power stations trip, we then lose the generation capacity in that particular power station. And Eskom takes some time to first determine what is the cause of the problem and also to then solve the problem and bring the unit that has tripped back to life. So what happens is because it goes with generation capacity, it then affects the entire grid because the grid basically loses that generation capacity, which then implies that Eskom will then have to look at the demand versus the supply, and if the demand is much higher because we've lost that generation capacity, they then have to implement load shedding to protect the integrity of the grid.
So from generating to transmission, is there no point in the grid where some surplus energy is stored so that when the generation a unit trips in one power station, you can isolate that transmission line?
There is no place where it's stored because what happens is the electricity gets generated, and then we have what we call the stepping up of the voltage for transmission to cater for the transmission losses. and then it gets transmitted, and then it gets when it gets on the distribution side, there's the stepping down of the voltages. So the only storage happens either at households that have got battery storage facilities, or other places that have got other storage facilities, or we use what we call the pumped storage facilities. In Cape Town, for instance, there is Palmit pumped storage station, where they pump water up the mountain when we've got more electricity, and when the grid is constrained, they can then open the gates, and then the water comes down and it goes through a turbine and produces electricity. There are 2 pumped storage schemes in Cape Town. There's another one in Stellenbosch that has been reopened recently by the city of Cape Town. That pumped storage facilities are helping the city of Cape Town to avoid one stage of load shedding in combination with other initiatives that the city of Cape Town is involved in. So there is no storage, no particular storage apart from those. And Eskom is currently looking at big battery storage facilities where they can then store electricity when we generate more, and then dispatch it when the grid is constrained. We have what we call the CSP project, or the concentrating solar power projects. Those ones, they are the ones that have got on-site storage, because they basically concentrate the heat on the target, and then they increase the temperature of the medium that is on the target, and then with that you can then produce heat the water up, and then run the generators and produce electricity. So they can store whatever that they are heating there, and then dispatch it at a later stage when the grid is constrained and when we need more electricity.
Yeah, and that's not enough from what your answer here to be able to save us currently in the short term from these bouts of rolling blackouts. Now, back to the tripping. You said, I mean, a unit will trip to protect itself if there's too much pressure on it, or as an example, or it could be sabotage. Let's just zoom in on that thing around sabotage. In your view, if it's sabotage happening at different places, is it difficult for Eskom to deal with it?
Yeah, the difficulty is when is that first we know that the power stations can trip. So we know that, and the reason behind that is basically the changes in what the power electronics will detect on the other side in terms of the grid code, your voltage, your frequencies, and other things. So that is known, but the rate at which these trippings are taking place, and the manner in which they're taking place, like you rightly said, 5 trips at a particular point in time, those start to raise questions. And because Eskom has already indicated that there are some acts of sabotage, one, gets aligned to, that narrative that there could be some sabotage, because we know that people can play with the grid code, for instance. But coming back to your specific question.
Before you leave, sorry. So just on that point, before I forget, who has the grid code? Why is it freely available to anybody who can mess with it?
It's not freely available to anybody. We have what we call the system operator. So within the system operator, we've got various people who are operating these power stations using a system that we call the SCADA system. So basically, they sit in front of computers and they can see what is happening on the power station. They have some control of what is happening on the power station. So if Eskom has to investigate what is happening with these trippings, they need to first interview such kind of people who are controlling these power stations, and they then need to go into the actual problems, because we could be saying there's sabotage only to find that it's other challenges that have got to do with the operation of the
I mean, we are speculating because of some of these trippings and the way they've been happening recently, particularly in the last 2 months, you're just wondering what is going on. Okay, now back to the question, would it be difficult then for Eskom, if there was such sabotage, to resolve it?
It wouldn't be very difficult. It's something that needs a bit of forensic investigation. They need to investigate it mainly from the technical side of things, because once a power station trips, and it's not only the system operator that has got control of that. Even people at power station level can do certain things that could change the grid, the parts of the grid code, the voltage, the frequencies, and things like that. So that's why I say it needs forensic investigation that will then basically look on the technical side to say, we've got this number of trips. And when we investigated, because that particular unit will basically be shut down for some time, and then there will be an investigation after every single trip. So they need to go back and look at what are the causes that we are finding after every single trip. And then through that forensic investigation, it can tell them whether this was a man-made kind of a trip, or this is something that can normally happen. For instance, most of the power stations are old, and some of the power stations, the Medupi and Kusile, had some design problems. It could be design problems in those power stations. It may not be man-made, but it could be man-made as well. And in the old ones, it could be because of something that happens because the system is quite old. Something breaks, and then it affects the grid code, and the system will then trip.
So there are a number of factors.
There's a whole lot of investigation that needs to take place before we come to a conclusion.
Well, Prof, thank you very much for helping us to understand why these units have been tripping so much. We still don't have a full answer. It could be a number of factors, but thanks for enlightening us this afternoon. Thank you. That's Professor Sampson Mamaphweli. He's the Director for the Center for Renewable and Sustainable Energy at Stellenbosch University.